In the video today, we're going to be building the most competitive Champions League dream team we can on a budget to compete in the special competition on Sorare for the Champions League European Nights, which has $100,000 in prize money allocated towards it. This is a competition that is firmly aimed at players that are picking up in-season cards on Sorare. And although the Champions League covers the best teams across European football from a number of different leagues, we're going to be taking an extra focus on players on Sorare that play in the champion region, the big 5 leagues of European football. This is a budget build that I've been really looking forward to doing since this competition was announced, because there is a really chunky prize pot available every midweek. But also, with Sorare having league-specific competitions for La Liga, the Premier League and the Bundesliga, those 3 leagues have got an extra little bit of a premium on them already, but we still have the likes of Italy and France to do some shopping in, where we could maybe get some guys really good points per pound players that, compared to Champions League players in those other 3 leagues, are a fraction of the price. At any point in the video today, if you do laugh, you learn, you like something or whatever, please do like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this as we get set for the biggest season ever on Sorare. And get into the comment section and let me know who your top tips and suggestions would be for Champions League football on a budget on Sorare. And yeah, let's just get stuck straight into it. Now, whenever I'm doing these videos, I'm always putting myself in the shoes of if I actually wanted to go and achieve this goal, or if I was actually spending this money, if I was actually building this squad, who are the players? What is the caliber? What's the level of good players actually needed? Would this be a functional strategy? Would this actually lead to success? And I've had a lot of fun doing this, because I think a lot of people in the community have already seen that there is a real difference in price for the players in Liga and Serie A versus La Liga, Bundesliga and the Premier League. And now that they have access into the European Nights competition, I think that discount, I think that difference in price is really going to show up to be extra value for anyone that is picking up in-season Liga or Serie A cards. But whenever I'm doing that, I don't like planning for the short term. I don't like planning for the immediate term. I always like to give something that, if any of you guys watching this video did anything verbatim, your squad would flourish and it would grow throughout time, with obviously winning some cards and hitting the leaderboard and all the rest of it. But even if like the bad things happened, like transfers or different bits and pieces, it might not actually rip the strategy apart. It might actually enhance it in some way. So I've tried to keep those usual things on the channel at the front of my mind when I've been going through this. But the European Nights competition has $100,000 in prize money. And if we look at the example we've got here for the limited competition for the first match day of the Champions League, which will be in game week 10 of Sorare, it's $3,000 to the top spot. The podium pays out basically $6,500, and we get payouts for the top 100 spots. So across the 8 match days of the Champions League, we're trying to build a team that can break the top 100 a fair couple of times. But because we're also building them from within that champion Euro region, we also have weekends to play them in. And it's not just about the Champions League strategy, but if we build a team that could do well in the Champions League format, then there's no reason that at the weekend they're not going to be dominant players. Champions League teams generally are finishing in the top 4 of their domestic competition, and subsequently they have some of the best players in the world. So although we're buying players on a budget, we're still buying really high caliber guys that are elite professionals at somewhat near the peak of their career. And the first place we have to start, unfortunately, is in goalkeeper. And I say unfortunately because it's just not that exciting, it's just not terribly fun. But with the way the prices are at the moment, and with the strategy that we're trying to glean here, there's actually a really interesting dynamic we've got with 2 goalkeepers, with 2 squads that we can use right now for the Champions League. And, you know, depending on how the season rolls out, we'll have a good bit of security, but maybe further down the road, we might have a bit of a, what do you call it, mitosis? You know, cell division, you know, it kind of breaks off and then you get 2 goalkeepers playing, this sort of thing. But anyway, we'll start off and this will all become quite apparent. But the number 1 goalkeeper that really does jump out for me at the moment in terms of price and, you know, the utility we can get from him is Philip Cohn, who now looks to be the Monaco number 1 after an injury to former number 1 Polish goalkeeper Majecki. His last sale was around £27. His floor price at the moment is 16, and his average sales over the last 3 days is around the £14 mark. So this is a really cheap Champions League goalkeeper that his scores when he plays, like, he's not the best, but he can hit those bigger scores. He can be a guy that can make some saves. Really, the thing I like more about Cohn here is just that there's not too many scores that absolutely kill a team. You know, if you're getting into the mid to high 40s, the low 50s in some of these Champions League games, although we are hoping we get out the 8 matches, say 3 or 4 like clean sheets or 60 plus scores, certainly, whether that's for a penalty save or whatever, There's not too many scores there where I think he would be absolutely killing us. Monaco are not a team that I think when they go into the Champions League are going to lose to many teams by 3 goals or more. So Philip Cohen for me around the £25 mark or so, depending on when you're watching this video, for me is very good bang for buck. But like I mentioned, he was the number 2 and Radislav Majecki here was number 1. Now at the moment, his pricing hasn't really changed on Sorare too much, but once those DNPs start to show from the injuries he's got, I suspect his price is going to come down because he is a very good scoring goalkeeper, and until those DNPs start rocking up, that price will stay where it is at the moment. But while we're using Philip Cohen throughout the next 2 or 3 months or whatever, we want to keep a little eye on this Majecki price, and if he comes down to being the price of Philip Cohen, then picking him up is just easy business to do, and it just really secures us in the Monaco goalkeeper position. But Philip Cohen was the number 1 at Salzburg, so if he sees he is firmly number 2, even after this second chance or whatever, January next summer, he could be a number 1 goalkeeper somewhere else, so it's not going to be a purchase that's in vain as such. And my number 2 goalkeeper is going to be Łukasz Skorupski. Now, there's kind of 2 things to say at this point. I'm looking to build 2 five-man lineups in the hope that I'll have one that is forever strong. I'll always have a good number 1 team. And my number 2, maybe it's kind of strong as well, but maybe those question mark players go in, the ones that maybe don't have as great of a fixture on paper. And then as we start to win and accrue cards, we've got the option to strengthen team 2 and over time eventually get into team 3, because all these competitions have a maximum entry limit of 3 entries into each competition. Now, I don't want to set out buying 3 goalkeepers. I'd happily win one later on, but I do think that we want 2 for that little bit of coverage, that maybe one has a better game than the other, and all the other stuff that I just mentioned a minute ago. And Skorupski, Bologna, they're in the Champions League. Bologna might not have as good of a group stage as maybe Monaco, but I wouldn't totally write them off. The only reason I'm a wee bit less high on Bologna is they've lost their manager. There's been some key transfers out, like Joshua Zirkzee and Riccardo Calafiore. But Skorupski is a very, very good goalkeeper, very AA friendly. And as long as Bologna aren't conceding 2 or more goals, like, this is a keeper that could have you, and has had me, really high up on the leaderboard. But part of the problem we had with Skorupski last year under the last manager, Thiago Motta, was that he actually really liked an up-and-coming goalkeeper in the squad by the name of Federico Ravaglia. Now, this is a young up-and-coming goalkeeper. I don't expect him to play much this year. Bologna have changed manager, and I don't think Italiano is going to be rotating goalkeepers the same way that Motta did, certainly. But all the same, this guy has a high reputation and might go out on loan in January, might be sold in the summer, might replace Skorupski. Maybe Skorupski gets sold in the summer or something like that. He's like £5-10, something like that. Not that bad at all. But as you can see from his scoring averages, when he was playing, like, he's a really good goalkeeper with the ball at his feet, and he did have some very impressive performances. Having him in for £5 or so does secure the Skorupski situation if you know he's injured or suspended, or the manager makes a known change of number 1 status or something like that. So it helped just make sure that the purchase we're making for the goalkeeper, which isn't ever really that fun, it's not going to be undone on us, and we're not going to be pulling our hair out that a number 2 has came and got the job. But also the number 1s and number 2s that we're looking at here for these 2 squads are all credible goalkeepers that independently could have, the next 2 or 3 years, quite interesting careers, and could be used for us in our team here on Sorare. But between those 4 guys, we're only expecting 2 of them to be starters in the immediate term, which is fine, and we've got that little bit of insurance, that little bit of security. But the rest of the team, we need killers. We need guys in the Champions League that are going to be winning matches, be involved in, hopefully, high-scoring games, and domestically, when we're using them at the weekend, are going to be effective. And there's only a fair few players that actually fall into that category. Now, for this build, I actually got really excited that some of the players we were actually looking at, the price point we found them at compared to some other players in the market. And some of them are real favourites of mine. When it comes to, because what we've got here is we've got Skorupski and Cohen. So we've got a footprint in France and in Italy. In case those fixtures don't correlate, maybe the Italian football's on Coppa Italia duty, and likewise with French football, maybe they don't always link up. So if we've got a team from each league independently, then we know we'll always have one good entry, and then when they both play, weekends and midweeks, we can mingle them up and mash them up together. But the first defender that came onto the build here is Theo Hernandez, who has been my favourite left back for the last 2 or 3 years, and on Sorare, he is an absolute killer. He's basically a left forward for the most part. His average price now is around £30, and for a guy that can hit massive peak scores, for me, this is incredible points per pound. Now, he is a fullback, so he can kill you. And this might be games that AC Milan have actually done well in, but if he's losing possession all the time, he's not actually getting shots on target, he's not actually scoring the points for all these final third contributions and possessions and entries into the box that he's trying to get, but they're not coming off, then yeah, he maybe can kill a team a little bit. And for that reason, a lot of people like picking up centre-backs. So Theo Hernandez would be my guy, but if you wanted a little bit of insurance if, like, number one, maybe Theo doesn't play, or maybe, like, the rest of the team looks really strong, so you just need to make sure the defender isn't going to kill the team, then Fikayo Tomori at the moment is really, really cheap. Also of AC Milan as well, of course. He's averaging now for around £5 or so, and Fikayo Tomori is a really good defender, a really good centre-back player as well. And yeah, again, like, he's not as peaky, he's maybe not as powerful as a Theo Hernandez, but I think he pairs well with him for the Serie A side of this, as well as in the Champions League. If you know that Theo Hernandez probably isn't going to be on for a good game, but maybe the AC Milan centre-back situation would be more appealing, Fikayo Tomori for £5 for me is an absolute steal. And then when it comes to the Ligue 1, when it comes to the French kind of mirror image of this is what put the big smile on my face, because we've got Achraf Hakimi into this. Now, Hakimi, again, has been one of my favourite players to watch over the last couple of years. One of my favourite cards on Sorare, although I've not actually had him that recently or had him that long. His average price, again, very similar to Theo Hernandez in that kind of £20 to £25 range. And again, similar to Theo, this guy can win you stuff. This guy can get you right high up the leaderboard. He can bring the big scores. PSG, domestically and in Europe, do murder teams. And Hakimi gets himself into the box. He loves an assist. He loves a goal. And he is a real... I love Hakimi. For me, he's one of the top 3 right backs in European football, and for the price point he's at, fantastic. Now, we could do a similar thing with PSG and look at someone like Beraldo or maybe Marquinhos, but thinking about that Philip Cohen-Mayeki situation, Wilfried Singo, who is currently on a yellow card accumulation, so don't worry about that. Another centre-back who could pair with the goalkeeper quite nicely, who is averaging in price under £10 at the moment, who maybe more so than Tomori, but maybe not by much, offers us a little bit more security in the position, but still has those peak scores domestically and in Europe, can be a really formidable player. But when it comes to midfield, for me, midfield is where your teams win and lose. It's most likely going to be where your captain selection comes from, and if someone is going to break 100, more off, maybe it's a defender like a Theo or an Hakimi, but more often than not, it's going to be a midfielder that can get 20 plus AA and maybe 1 or 2 decisives to just get them up hitting that 100 score. And for club and country for the last little while, Fabian Ruiz ticks all of those boxes. Now, I don't know why he didn't play the opening game of the season, but his price is under a tenner at the moment. I know there has been some transfer links for him, but Fabian Ruiz is very firmly a very strong candidate for a midfielder on a budget that will be very significantly important in the Champions League and domestically. He is 100 capable, he's 80 plus capable, and for under £10 on his average for his in-season card at the moment, this feels like a buy that is a wee bit suppressed because he didn't play the first game of the season there for Paris Saint-Germain. And even if he did make a transfer, Fabian Ruiz isn't going to transfer somewhere at this stage of his career, having just won the Euros, being the main man, really announcing himself to world football, it felt like, in that competition. But if he's going to leave being the main playmaker at PSG for another team, he's not going to go sit on the bench. So even if he did leave, I wouldn't really worry about that too much. We maybe just lose that little bit of correlation on the leagues that we're trying to get here. But when I was looking across Ligue 1, Champions League midfielders, it is kind of slim pickings, but one of the players I found more interesting, more exciting, that does have a bit of a ceiling, a bit of room to grow, is Angel Gomez. Lille will be in Europe, and Lille, especially at home, will fight as good as they can get. They'll fight hard. They're not going to be a rollover team, certainly. And Angel Gomez is, at 23 years of age, has really developed in French football over the last couple of years. Again, an in-season card of this guy is going to be around £10. And this is a midfielder that is decisive, reliant, okay? But where he gets his AA, by dribbling past people, by getting into the box, shooting, sort of midfielder I want to have a piece of. And fair enough, maybe the regularity of the big scores isn't quite there, but he does have them, no two ways about it. And for the price point he's at the moment, I think he's a great guy to pair in with the likes of Singo and Hakimi and Philip Cohen, just to give a team a few more options for Champions League and at the weekend. And when it comes to Serie A, there's a wee bit more of a, that guy's a classic card element into it, because Sorare don't have a full complement of licensed clubs in Serie A at the moment. Teams like Inter, Juve and Roma spring to mind that there isn't a current license for. So any players that move there won't get an in-season version. But in all these competitions, you can play one classic card. And if you were to do that in this build, for me, I am just really excited for Koop Miners. I think when he goes to Juventus, he could really hit the same highs that we've seen him hit when he was back in Holland playing for AZ. At the moment, his averages, it will be a classic card. It's around the £15 mark or so. And looking at his scores for Atalanta Atalanta last season. Fair enough, that was Europa League and all the rest of it, but even domestically, at a team, this is a midfielder card that loses points for goals conceded. Atalanta do concede a lot of goals, more than the average kind of successful team, as it were. So I think these scores could improve quite well for him being at Juventus, and for a classic card to get a guy in kind of on the cheap, and he'll be a little bit of a differential because he's not going to have as much of a presence in these competitions that is so focused on the in-season cards. Because you are only allowed one classic card, so many managers will use that selection for someone like a Coop Miners, like a captain-capable guy, but a lot of guys will use it as well for the goalkeeper position, because classic keepers are cheaper than in-season keepers. So I think we've done well finding budget keepers so we can get a classic outfielder in. And for me, when I think that way and I look at the leagues we're looking at, Coop Miners just jumps up. Wee bit of speculation around this one from my part, but I think it's one that will come in. And if we're looking for something with a bit more synergy and something that's maybe a little bit more of a known element, a bit more of a known quantity, Tijjani Reinders just feels a really exciting midfielder to pair with that defence that we've already started to build. Again, I think he had quite a good Euros. I think he showed himself to be a better player than Joey Veerman. He is around £20 for a limited at the moment. The AC Milan cards, I've just remembered, I've been going through this. They get sold in packs, so you can buy them in like a bundle of 4 or 5. If we have a quick look at the market, we can open this one up here. That has a Tio Hernandez in it as well as a Tijjani Reinders. So if we could find one that had a Reinders, a Tio, and maybe 1 or 2 other ones, let's see how the rest of the video goes in. Like, you could maybe swoop up a bit of an AC Milan bundle on the go here. And for me, the midfielder card you would want would be Tijjani Reinders, because he's a good AA-based player. He's maybe not hit as many of those peaks at AC Milan as he used to in Holland, but you do feel he's getting better, he's growing as a player, and maybe these scores could more regularly appear. But he is a guy that's going to play very regularly, and if AC Milan are playing a minnow in the Champions League, because AC Milan will play 2 pot 4, 2 pot 3, 2 pot 2, 2 pot 1 teams. So there should be 4 fixtures there against pot 4 and pot 3, where a player like Tijjani Reinders can dominate possession and get as decisive, where he's going to break 70 or 80 points. And I think for the price point of around 20 quid or so, you can use him at the weekends as well. I think he's a decent shout. Now, when it comes to forwards, there's a few headaches and a few hurdles we always have to overcome. But the first thing my mind always comes to when I'm doing these sorts of things is, who's going to break 10? Who's going to break 15, 20 goals in a season? Who could be a Golden Boot contender, an outside shout for Golden Boot, whatever it might be? And when I think about Serie A Golden Boot, the number one name that comes to my mind this season is Alvaro Morata. Again, a Euros winner. He's going back to Italy. He wants out of the kind of hustle and bustle of Madrid and all the grief he gets for being an Atletico Madrid fan that played and was successful for Real Madrid. And, you know, he's been in Italy a few times. We know he scores goals in Italy. And the AC Milan have been crying out for this type of guy. Giroud was a bit of a stopgap. Ibrahimovic the same. But again, in the bundles with Morata, you're maybe looking at his cost of the bundle, maybe getting closer to the £50 mark. If you did get him as a classic, you're looking at him being very, very cheap. He's not a huge AA player, but Alvaro Morata could be a decisive a game average in Serie A for me. And in the Champions League, he is a bully. If AC Milan are playing these pot 4, pot 3 teams, Alvaro Morata can score hat-tricks, he can score 2, he could be on penalties. And this is a guy that, yeah, he's not going to break into the 80s and the 90s, but he's very regularly a guy that's going to get 60 and above for me at AC Milan, Champions League and in Serie A. But when you look at AC Milan for the forward options, Rafa Leao is the star. But when it comes to SO5, the number one guy to pick up, and I think for the points that this guy brings in, Christian Pulisic at, you know, what we're talking about, a floor price of £30, an average of maybe 60, depending on how we're looking at bundle breakups. This is a guy that you would really be propelled up the leaderboard with when he has a good game. Being out in the wing, being the creator, swinging the ball into the box, you know, having a guy like Morata getting fed off the back of him. These regular peak scores, these peak scores here, I could see them becoming a lot more regular. And this is a guy that will take the captain's armband for your squad. This is a guy that you will see in winning lineups at weekends and in the Champions League. And, you know, for the kind of average that we're talking about here, let's call it around the £40 mark alongside a Morata. This could be a strike partnership that really does 16 goals, 10 assists in the last year. That is a great track record. And if you wanted to go double forward, maybe not with the Morata, but, you know, with maybe some other cards that we've got, Pulisic is a worthy contender of that. And when we go back and we look at the Ligue 1 counterpart of this build, Ousmane Dembele is very, very similar to Christian Pulisic, I beg your pardon, in a lot of different ways. Now, Dembele does really divide opinion, and sadly, for me and for all football lovers, Dembele is really streaky, but Dembele can absolutely kill it. And when you know he's in the team every week and he's playing all the time, when PSG are in Liga in action or Champions, like PSG are a team that score 4, 5, and 6 goals somewhat regularly. One of the more regular achievers of those score lines of anyone in world and European football, you would say. And Dembele is always involved in these things, it feels like. So Dembele at the moment, an in-season card is going to cost somewhere between 20, 30, 40 pounds, something like that. A France international as well. We've not even spoken about international utility for a lot of these players, but a guy that very conceivably gets above 75 is a guy that we want leading our attack. And with PSG and the attacking positions in the post-Mbappe era, we get a really similar opportunity to what we have just now with AC Milan in the sense of Randall Kolo Muani. Now, I think Muani is going to be the number one centrepiece, the spearhead, arrowhead forward at PSG. Goncalo Ramos has had some length away, came off injured in the first game. But the thing at PSG is they want their team to be French. They want their team to be, cohesive and built over a period of time and all the rest of it. And they spent a lot of money on Kolo Muani. At the moment, he's looking to be under £20 for an in-season card. And this is a guy that a little bit better maybe than Morata for getting those AA. Although his frequency of getting goals and assists last year at PSG wasn't as good as Morata last year at Atletico. But this year, I feel that both of them, Muani could be a contender for Golden Boot in Ligue 1 this year as well. And a guy that's going to be circa around this price, he could be in the top 5 for the Golden Boot is kind of what I'm saying. I don't think he might win it, but he's a guy that will be in the conversation if he's fit and available and playing every week. Never mind what he could do in the Champions League. It just feels like fantastic bang for buck. So if we look at what could be the first choice build for the French Ligue 1 side of this, we're looking at a lineup with an average price of around £130, a lineup floor price of 83. If we did go all classic, I'm talking about this being an in-season thing, but if you wanted to take this and apply it to classic, it would be, significantly cheaper. And here with the Serie A one, we would have a lineup floor price of £109 with an average price of 123. And the French one, I had double defender. For this one, I'd maybe be double forward. And if I was to go and combine them for a Champions League night, I think this might be something like the team I would be going for. Double fullback of Teo and Hakimi bombing on, Fabian Ruiz the playmaker in the middle, and then the flair of Pulisic up front with the Polish wall, Skorupski in goals. That feels like a Champions League team that would be a lot of fun for a lot of different match days, for a lot of different game weeks. And this team could also be played in weekends. And then this lineup with a floor price of 77 and an average of 101 could be a really strong, a really decent team too, that maybe you don't fancy it on the, Atalanta are away, or Juventus are away, or this or that, the other thing. But individually, all these guys can still pop off, and you've still got them together in a pretty strong lineup. And then you would have these guys in reserve, just waiting for goalkeeper number 3 to come in, and you would have 3 lineups ready to rock for all these things that we've laid out. So, like I say, we've kind of got actually 3 teams about here. So I've built a watch list for all these players we've got in the video today. I'll link that in the description of the video in case you want to go and check it out for yourself and go and look at the scores and the price and averages of this squad, of this build. As we look at it at the moment, the cumulative price of £337 feels pretty lean and mean for me, for the quality and the calibre of squad that we've laid out and we've spoke about here, for 2 really strong squads with the option of maybe a third little depth one being available to us. And for 16 players, like, we're not covering too many squads, but we're still getting enough kind of variation that we're not like pinned to the success of one individual club, or we're not pinned to the fixture calendar of one league. We've got 2, and we do have that midweek synergy where we can mash them all up and just pick the fixtures, pick the availability, and no matter what, make sure that there is one really solid team that could come out of this every weekend, every midweek. I've really enjoyed this build, guys. I'll be really interested to hear what your thoughts and feelings are, and any suggestions that you would make adding into this UCL budget dream team that we've built. On screen there now is some other stuff that I've made that YouTube thinks you might enjoy. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more content like this. Stay out of trouble, and I will catch you on the next one.